feel the power of you controlling your breathing right now, in this moment. Here, in the present, the greatest gift you have, that we have. That power, that determination that's in you, in everyone, it's the same power we use to control our minds, one thought at a time, one breath at a time. Here we are.
Hey guys, another fear that robs us of being our true great self in each and every day and at each and every moment is the fear of criticism. This is one where we have to really go within ourselves and say, what is it that we're really afraid of? Why do we care so much about what others are going to say about things that we believe in or things that we want to do? Especially if we want to achieve our dreams, if we really want to be happy, peaceful, successful, and achieve that infinite wealthy state of mind, we have to be willing to go deep and master that fear of criticism. Most of the times, people care very much for us and they're probably worried about us and want to protect us. But we have to be able to say to ourselves, we have to have such strong belief and conviction in what we're doing, in the rightness of what we're doing, and that will give us the strength to take that criticism, use it, and apply it in a successful way. Have a great day.
Look, I spent 5 years in college. I went to college because I thought the teachers were going to teach me business. I love teachers, okay? Teachers are great people, but you can't know business if you're in a classroom. It's just not possible. It's like my economics teacher, there's no way he could imagine the fuel bill on my plane. It's just not real. You go to Lord Sugar and say, hey, how do you make sense of 4 jets? Why would you do that? Why'd you buy that building right there? That's the information I want. See, but most us in this room, we were taught we had to go someplace and spend 4 or 5 years there. I'm not trying to talk you out of school or university, but the fact that it takes 4 years to get out of university by itself is a major problem. It's a major problem. You know why? The 4 years, I'm trading time for money. What do rich people do? They trade money for time.
You don't go to school to learn. You go to school to get a degree, and that degree hopefully helps you get a job that you're looking for. But you don't go to school to learn. There's just so many more effective ways to learn than to go to a university. And listen, I went to university. I don't regret that I went to university. And it was 20 years ago that I went to university. And I thought I wanted to be an investment banker. And at the time, being an investment banker, you needed to have a university degree. Still probably now. I mean, if you want to become a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, you have to go to school. You have to go to school to get the degree to then allow you to get the opportunities in the job. That has to happen. Nobody's gonna hire you to be a doctor if you are just practiced. Like, just go out and get real world experience. How are you gonna get real world experience as a doctor without any kind of degree, right? But if you want to be an entrepreneur, it's only becoming more and more useless. I mean, it was pretty useless for me 20 years ago. I'm 42. Yeah, I'm 42. So 20 years ago, I remember being in my 4th year graduating class, small business course, and I was already running my company at the time, and it was honestly a waste of time. Everybody who was in the class was thinking of doing coffee shops and these little businesses, and I wanted to build a huge biotech software company. My professor didn't run a business, so I don't know how you can teach entrepreneurship if you don't have your own company. And it was just a giant waste of time. I ended up most of the time being on my laptop and working on my business while he was talking. That was 20 years ago. Now I can't even imagine what it would be like right now, and how boring it would be, and how useless or irrelevant it would be, and how much I just want to be skipping class and making videos. There's so many more opportunities right now. And listen, I was a good student. I never skipped class. It was more that I was probably afraid of missing out on stuff and failing tests. So even though I had a lot of entrepreneurial tendencies, I still did pretty well in school and showed up to classes and did all the assignments, but I wasn't happy about it. And it felt, especially the small business class, felt useless. If I'm taking economics classes and I'm taking accounting classes, those felt a lot more practical in that it would guide me towards being an investment banker. I had to have those classes on my resume, but the small business one just felt like a giant waste of time. Think about your own education experience. Most of high school, college is just memorization, right? You're just memorizing stuff. It's the connections to other people, which can be helpful, and then memorizing. You don't actually learn very much. Like, how much did you actually remember from your stats class or math class or calculus or French or whatever? Like, how much did you actually? Most of it is just memorization. I'm not actually completely anti-education. It's just more, do your actions map to your ambitions? So if you want to be an entrepreneur, you're going to get nothing pretty much from a university education. If you want to be a doctor, then you have to go off and do it. And it's not so much that you're learning amazing things, because you can learn it in much faster ways. If you care about something, you're going to learn a lot more. And if you see it being practical and applicable to your life, you're going to learn a lot faster. I remember being in stats class, and statistics was super boring to me. I memorized a whole bunch of things and formulas and never applied it, didn't see how this was relevant, and so instantly forgot it. And then I was working on I have my own software company now and tool that we're using, and we're split testing different thumbnails, one versus the other, and I wanted to be statistically significant. And I remembered that term from my stats class, like, whoa, how do you calculate that again? Now that it actually became applicable to me, now I'm suddenly interested in it. And when you care about something, you're gonna be more interested in it, and you're gonna learn it, and it'll stick. Where most of the stuff that we learn in school, you just don't find it relevant or helpful, and so it doesn't stick. And so there's much faster ways to learn. It's caring about it. It's being in the community of other people who are learning. But the point of school is not to learn. The point of school is to get the degree so you can get the job. And if that's what your goals are, awesome. You still have to play that game. And if it's not your goals, then how can you better achieve your goals, right? And I get there's still pressure, and maybe your family's forcing you to do it, or you still think that in the eyes of society that's the best thing to do. But man, as long as you're making decisions based off of other people's opinions, you're never going to win. If you're living your parents' version of your life, or you're living society's version of your life, you're just never going to win. That doesn't mean that you just drop everything and, just throw it all away. But are you taking enough action and enough steps towards building the thing that you want to build? And maybe that means taking a year off. Maybe that means taking a semester off. Maybe that means starting your side hustle. Like, there's one thing just to complain about a life that you don't like, but the more important thing is, are you taking action? The amount of people who are complaining about the thing that they're doing that they don't enjoy, but at the same time are taking zero action towards the thing they want to do, the thing that you claim you enjoy. Are you spending enough time? Have you scheduled it in? Is it in your calendar that consistently you're taking some kind of action towards the life that you want to build, or not? And for too many people, it's no. You're just complaining about a life that you don't like, about a school system that you don't like, about a job you don't like, about a relationship you don't like. But what are you doing to actually fix it? And again, it doesn't mean you have to burn the boats and go all in and pour garbage all over your boss's office or quit school right away, right? It doesn't mean you have to go all in right away, but you do have to take consistent action towards building a life that you do want. I look at Movement Makers as an example, and that's my training program. It's my mentorship program where every 2 weeks I get thought leaders together who are trying to build their audience, build their community. They have a movement inside them that they want us to get out into the world. And so we talk about making videos and winning on social media and getting book deals and becoming a speaker. And how do you get that thing that's in your heart? How do you get that message here out to the world? And we meet every 2 weeks, and it's the greatest educational thing out there for people who want to become thought leaders, right? If you don't want to be a thought leader, you're going to be bored and find it a waste of time. If you want to be a thought leader, it's the best thing in the world. And it's training with me, but it's also connection to community of other people who are doing it. So when you want to learn something, I look at them and they're doing it and they're taking on challenges and they're making videos, and all of a sudden now they're starting to get an audience and starting to get clients and building a business. And that's the best. You know, it's the best. And the fact that they're not just doing it by themselves, but they're doing it with other people, that you're part of a community. When you're around other people who are also learning. Learning is one thing. And going from education to self-education, like traditional education, formal education to self-education, becomes a game if you want to learn, right? Traditional education, the goal is not to learn, the goal is to get a job. Cool, if that's your goal, awesome. If you want to learn, you have to flip the model from traditional education to self-education. Stop blaming the traditional education system. It's just not designed to learn. That's not what you're there for. If you want to learn, you have to create your own self-education program. You have to go learn from the people who've done the thing that you want to do, model success, be around it, take consistent action, and get some kind of community. Because the learning amplifies when you're not doing it alone. If you feel like you're always alone, everything is on your shoulders, nobody around you understands, nobody else is trying to do something similar to you, you're isolated, you don't feel like you belong, that's really hard. It's not that it's not possible, it's just insanely difficult, and most people will quit along the way, or at the very least just not take enough consistent action. But when you're around other people who are doing the thing, who are also committed, who are learning, you're teaching each other, and you feel like you're not alone on the journey, it's one of the biggest improvements I made to Movement Makers. Was at the very, very beginning, it's 85 minutes every 2 weeks, right? So at the very beginning, it was me teaching for 85 minutes because I thought, you know what, got to get the education out, teach as much information is in my brain, pour it into your brain, let's go. And what I found was some of the best elements of Movement Makers is having the members connect to each other and creating breakout rooms for people where they can share their experience, explain what road they're on, creating a Discord where people can share their wins, get help from each other, so that's not all flowing through me, but then they're connected to each other. And when you can create a family of people who are also learning the same thing that you're learning, man, when you're around those kind of people, everything changes. When it's not just you pushing the ball uphill every single day all by yourself, everything changes. And so moving from traditional education to self-education to actually, if your goal is to actually learn, and then finding a community of people who are like-minded, who are also chasing down their goals and their dreams, you get that, man, the next year you'll be unstoppable. You'll be unrecognizable. Like the person who you will be in 1 year compared to who you are right now, you won't even recognize it. Wow, that's who I used to be. That's how you turbocharge your growth. Invest in self-education and get around a community of like-minded people who will push you forward.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
Good morning, guys. Today in our top 10 rules for success, Oprah Winfrey shares with us her 6th rule for success. And this is a huge one. Believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, and if you don't believe in what you're doing, the activating power of our mind is nullified. So we cannot use the full power of our mind if we don't believe that we can do it. She shares with us an example growing up, and uses the example of her grandmother. Her grandmother was a maid, and her grandmother was trying to give her advice on how she can also become a maid. Oprah Winfrey can become a maid one day. And Oprah just knew from a young age, 4 to 5 years old, she knew that there was something more for her. She felt it in her gut, in her heart, and in her soul. She just knew this wasn't going to be for her. She knew she was meant for something greater. And we all are. But we got to believe it so much that nothing can take away that belief. Have a great day, everybody.
The government wants you to use debt. This is something that a lot of people don't understand. We just want to get people to pay less tax and make more money. We're all playing the game. The only question is, you're going to play to win or are you going to play to lose? I'm going to borrow to buy Bitcoin. I'm going, well, there's a dumb idea. Okay, because...
And there he is. How you doing, Tom?
A baby boomer does it. This is amazing.
Is this your first time doing a live?
It is. It is. It's a historic moment for this baby boomer.
I love it, dude. I love it. Well, thank you for joining us in. Tom's got a new book out called The Win-Win Wealth Strategy. For the YouTube audience, we're going to link it up down below so you can go check it out. And it's basically all about how you can pay as little taxes as possible. Nobody likes paying the tax man, and Tom's got 7 amazing strategies to help you pay as few taxes as possible. And most people are afraid of numbers. People are afraid of accountants. They're not excited to go talk to their accountant. They don't understand half of what those people are saying. They don't understand their own balance sheet and income statement and all. And what you do a great job, I think, in the book is you make it easy to understand. Yes, there's still numbers. So guys, there are still numbers in there. So, but there's lots of pictures. You show like country by country what you can do, little check boxes. So if you're a really visual learner, this is not as soon as I saw a book written by an accountant, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so dry. But it's great. It's like so easy to read. So many pictures and checklists. And I love he has these stop and think call outs that's like takes up a third of the page and like, this is what you need to focus on. So anyway, Tom, awesome book. Thank you. And welcome aboard.
Thank you. It's good to be with you. And thanks for those comments. My goal in life is to make taxes fun, easy, and understandable. So if I can do that in this book, I love what we did in this book because I think it really is simple.
Maybe go like by how much I have. So if I've got 10,000 in my account, or 100,000, or 1 million, or 10 million, like what are the biggest opportunities for people at different stages?
So the number one opportunity for everybody is to start their own business. That is the number one opportunity. I actually run. I like running numbers because I'm an accountant, but it does prove things out, right? And what I did is I actually said, okay, if you started a business from home. Okay, how much of the cost of starting that business could you get the government to pay for in reducing your taxes on your other income? And it turns out it's over 100%. So the government will literally pay you to start a business. So, and you don't have to have any money because you can literally reduce your W-2 taxes, take your W-4, reduce your taxes, use the taxes that you would otherwise have paid to the government to start your business, and then you shouldn't owe money when you file your tax return because you will have reduced your taxes by more than that amount of money. So the government literally pays you to start a business. So that is the easiest thing to do. It literally takes no money at all. Because you can get it from the government, right? Just reduce your withholding, get it from the government, or you can say, well, I'm going to pre-fund it. Okay, maybe I've got $5,000. I'll pre-fund this, and I'll get my $5,000 back in a refund. Whichever way you do it. But that's actually the number one. That's the easiest. That's the least expensive, and it has the biggest results. I mean, think about this. Last couple of years, everybody's been working from home. Employees didn't get to deduct their home office, and people with a business did.
The big shift. And so for people, my audience are mostly entrepreneurs already, or they're wanting to be entrepreneurs. So you're preaching to the converted, but more so from like, I want to start my own thing, as opposed to, hey, this is a great tax strategy. So for people who don't know, is it just a lack of information? Are they talking to the wrong people? Are they just afraid? Like, why do people not know this?
All of the above. I do think that people think that taxes are what we call a zero-sum game in economics, right? So if the IRS wins, I have to lose. If I win that and I cheat, then that means the government loses. And those are the only alternatives. And that's not really the way the tax law works. There are lots of things like business where the government can win and you can win. Just know that the government will always win. The one thing we forget sometimes, the government's our partner, whether we like it or not. We don't get to choose that partner. Right? It's kind of like we don't get to choose our parents, right? But we don't get to choose the government. Hopefully we like our parents better than the government, but we don't get to choose. We don't get to choose being a partner, but we can choose how we're a partner. So we can either choose that we're actually active partners with the government. In other words, we're doing things the government wants done. And when we do those things, the government gives us incentives, we pay less tax. If we do things the government doesn't want done, like spending money, at the grocery store, government doesn't care if you spend money at the grocery store. There's no tax benefit for that. But if you go out to eat with your business partner, you do get to deduct it. So, look, the government's just saying, go out to eat with your business partner. Don't stay home and have, Grubhub. And we'll give you a tax benefit if you go out, but not if you stay in.
What I love about it is you're saying, hey, don't make the government the enemy. This is what we have to work with, and let's find the best of, inside of that scenario. And the bonus chapter, without maybe giving away too much, but at the very end, he's got his strategies, and then the bonus chapter is all about Biden versus Trump, and does it matter? And you're like, it doesn't matter. You just have to make sure you're picking what they care about to get the tax incentive. So, going forward, Biden maybe goes for re-election, maybe doesn't. Trump maybe comes back, maybe doesn't. What are the best things now? And then if Biden doesn't get in, and let's say Trump comes back or DeSantis somebody else comes in, how might our tax strategy shift?
Well, so think about what happened in 2017, right? Surprise, surprise, we got big real estate tax benefits. I don't know who was president. Oh, a real estate developer. Okay, not surprising, right? We got real estate tax developments. What's the big push right now? Big push right now is renewable energy. Well, lo and behold, there are huge renewable energy tax benefits. So there's always going to be tax benefits. The government will always incentivize things that they want you to do. Okay, they want you to buy an electric car, you get a $7,500 tax credit. If you buy a gas-powered car, you get no tax credit. That's a very simple example of it, right? The same is true in investing, though. So remember that when you invest, if you invest the way the government wants you to invest, you never have to pay tax at all. So, you might make $100,000 from your W-2 job or from your business. If you reinvest that money into your business, real estate, energy, one of these 7 investments, you don't have to pay tax on that $100,000. It's not just that you won't pay tax on your investment money, it's that you won't pay tax on the money that you put into the investment in the first place.
Where are you on buy, borrow, die?
Well, in my first book, Tax Free Wealth, I actually go through a whole example of it. Okay, so there's a whole chapter on buy, borrow, die in my first book, which is really basically you buy an investment, you borrow out any money that you need over the years, and then you die and the tax goes away. And it's actually a fairly simple strategy. You just have to remember that debt's not taxable. So I actually talk about debt in chapter 4 of Win-Win Wealth Strategy. The government wants you to use debt. This is something that a lot of people don't understand. Debt is money and money is debt. So the government wants you to borrow money, and right now they're raising the interest rates to slow down how much you're borrowing, but they still want you to borrow money. Because when you borrow money, that's new money into the economy, because the bank doesn't lend their depositors money. They lend new money. This is brand new money. And because the money's still in the bank, right? So they can't lend out your money. So they're actually lending new money. Well, the government wants you to do that. So the government gives you tax benefits. One of the biggest tax benefits for debt is when you borrow that money, you don't have to pay tax on it. And so why not borrow? When you die, your kids can pay it off when they sell your real estate or they sell your business. They can pay off the debt, and they're not going to pay tax when you die, because taxes go away when you die.
And when I first discovered that concept, I was blown away. It's like, how do all these rich entrepreneurs make no money but then buy all these things? Yeah. Because they're just taking out a loan. They have no income tax usually, right. Sometimes, but it's really small. They just take out loans against the value of their shares, and the money they make from the loans are not taxable. So they're not paying the government any tax on it, and they can go buy whatever they want. Yeah,
sure. They're getting, they do. They put their shares up as collateral, or you use life insurance. I actually do a whole chapter on insurance, because you can actually use life insurance the same way. You can borrow, you can use your life insurance as collateral. You don't pay tax on that borrowing. Actually, and if you take that money from your life insurance and you invest it, you actually get to deduct the interest as well. So you get like multiple tax benefits here, just by understanding the rules of the game. That, by the way, we're all playing the game. The only question is, you're going to play to win, or are you going to play to lose?
People are so afraid of debt. We've been taught that debt is bad. Our parents probably told us that don't do it, and credit cards are ripping us off. So tell us, how do we rewire our mindset around debt so it empowers us?
I have a really simple way to do that. The only reason you should have debt is to buy an asset, right? That's the reason for debt. The purpose of debt is to buy an asset. If you don't trust, if you're afraid of the debts because you don't trust the asset. If you're afraid of the debts because you don't trust the asset. People who trust the asset, I mean, you look at like real estate developers, they have billions of dollars of debt. Well, how can they get comfortable with billions of dollars of debt? Well, simply because they know that the tenants are going to pay for the debt, so they don't have to worry about it. The tenants are going to pay for it, and they know how to keep tenants in there. They know how to do their job, right? They know how to get that asset to continue to work. It's like me. Would I ever worry about borrowing? If I want to borrow to expand my CPA firm, what I need to worry about? No, because I know my CPA firm's always going to make money. It's made money for 30 years. It's not going to stop making money, right? So I trust that asset, right? I trust my business to produce the income. So it's okay if I need to borrow in order to expand that business, if I need to borrow to reinvest, I'm okay with that because I trust the asset. But if I don't trust the asset, let's say for example, let's say that you're going, well, I'm going to borrow to buy Bitcoin. I'm going, well, there's a dumb idea, okay? Because you should never trust that asset because there's nothing there to trust, right? I mean, there's no there. That's the challenge with Bitcoin. Now, it may go up, it may go down, we don't know, but you have no control over it. So what you want is an asset that you can control. If you can control the asset, then you don't have to worry about the debt.
Well, I think also when people are thinking about a credit card, they're not buying assets at all. They're buying shoes and clothes.
Right,
and
that's bad debt.
Right. So as long as you're using the money to go buy an asset that's going to keep going up, then that's how people successfully fund and grow, and the ultra wealthy keep growing.
Right. But
Morning, guys. I want to share an example with you from Les Brown again today in his life. I was listening to his speech at the Georgia Dome this morning, and he gives an example of how we can fight this fear of criticism. And his example is when he finally made it. He finally ended up on television, achieved his dream, and Mr. Washington, an old high school teacher, called him up and said to him, "It was you, wasn't it? You were the one." And Les Brown, when he realized that, he was so fulfilled, of course, and so happy. But one of the funniest things, and I try to remember this when we're attacked or we're criticized or we might think that people are crazy, Mr. Washington said to him, "But you were so crazy," in high school when Les Brown was young. And Les just says to him, or says to himself, "Yeah, but I'm so rich now." And I thought, wow, that's amazing. That's the attitude. It doesn't matter what people think, how crazy we are. We got to find our happiness. Have a great day, everybody.
If we are in a pretty relaxed state, or if we are happy, we generally feel like we can do what we want to do. We can maneuver through our environment. We can make choices that are reasonable, but oftentimes we're not in relaxed and happy states. That's just part of the human experience, obviously. And there's a fundamental feature to the nervous system, which is this thing they call the autonomic nervous system, which is just fancy nerd speak for the components of your nervous system that raise your levels of alertness or bring them way down. Sometimes we hear fight or flight, rest and digest. But basically what happens is when we are at the extremes of the autonomic, what I call seesaw, of very, very alert to the point of being really stressed or panicked or concerned, or if we are very close to sleep and we're drowsy and we're exhausted, at those points along the autonomic nervous system, our thoughts become a bit like a runaway train. If you're very upset, it's hard to talk yourself out of it. If you're stressed, it's hard to think yourself out of it. In fact, you can start doing all sorts of third-personing and rationalization. You can call someone, you can text somebody. It's very hard to get yourself out of those states with thinking alone. But the beauty of the autonomic nervous system is that it traverses the brain and the body, and it connects to all the organs of the body. And it's a two-way street such that certain behaviors, even certain patterns of breathing, allow us to shift where we are on the autonomic continuum between very, very alert and stressed and very calm, and thereby give our mind a shift also in terms of the kinds of thoughts that we can entertain, the sorts of actions that we can engage in.
Need motivation?
Watch Top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle.
But you know you're capable of more, and you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best.
So today, let's learn from one of the best, Dr. Andrew Huberman, and my take on his top 10 roads to success. Enjoy.
To make this concrete, if you're very, very stressed, or you're very, very upset, two things happen. One, it's very hard to take your focus off whatever it is that's upsetting you. And if you don't know what's upsetting you, pure anxiety, but you don't know why, it's very hard to take your mind off of the feelings of anxiety. In those states of mind, there's another component, which is that for whatever reason, and no one really understands why this is, it feels as if the state that you're in will go on forever. Now, when we're in happy, relaxed states, rarely do we think, gosh, this is going to go on forever. And yet when we are in these unfortunate states of mind, we get the idea somehow, it sort of hijacks our perception of time, and we feel like this is never going to stop. If we turn to the body and certain behaviors, we talk about what those are, we are able to move ourselves along the autonomic continuum. And at that point, when we've done that successfully, and it's actually quite straightforward to do, we are able to think about things differently. We start to get a sense that the way we feel might not be the way we're going to feel forever. And it's in those shifts that we start to realize, my mind actually is not my best friend at these extremes, but there's a lot more to it. You're only getting the tip of the iceberg in those states. So that's why I say, if you can't control the mind with the mind, look to the body to control the mind.
Rule number 2, regulate dopamine levels.
When you deprive a kid of something that is very, very dopaminergic, that stimulates the release of a lot of dopamine, and then they actually have access to that at a friend's house or something of that sort, it is going to create a massive increase in pleasure. So I think there's this issue of, not eliminating things, but having a controlled relationship to these very, very powerful stimuli. I mean, movies are very powerful. This is not the topic that we're talking about right now, but I get a lot of questions these days about dopamine and about pornography, for instance. Pornography, removing all judgment from this, because that's not what the basis of the conversation is. Pornography has created an enormous number of problems in certain countries in the last 10 years, mostly because of its immense availability and the intensity of the images. It's also wired up a lot of young brains to become aroused watching other people have sex as opposed to being in the physical act of sex themselves. So there's a lot of, you can't even call it third personing, and they're not, they're aroused by imagery that they're not actually participating in. And I get a lot of questions about this, especially from the younger audience. So, am I saying all pornography is bad? No, not necessarily. I don't know. Any discussion about sex and sexuality, I always say we're of course framing it in the context of age appropriate, consensual, context appropriate, species appropriate. But the point is that, anything that stimulates a lot of dopamine release is a very sharp blade. So if you eliminate it completely, great in the short term, potentially treacherous in the long term. That kid goes to a friend's house and sees, a movie. Let's just remove pornography from the conversation.
Or get a bag of cookies.
Yeah, a bag of cookies. Or suddenly it tastes candy for the first time, and the brain is hardwired to get very, very excited about that. So then now you're dealing with a kid that potentially could get even more addicted to these things. So it just has to be controlled. It has to be controlled. Any potent stimulus, highly processed, highly palatable food, visual imagery, movies, has to be controlled.
Rule number 3, get rid of obsessions.
If we were to draw a line between the obsessions and the compulsions, that line could be described as anxiety. Now, we need to define what anxiety is. And to be quite honest, most of psychology and science can't agree on exactly what anxiety is. Typically, the way we think about fear is that it's a heightened state of autonomic arousal, so increased heart rate, increased breathing, sweating, etc., in response to an immediate and present threat or perceived threat. Whereas anxiety, generally speaking in the scientific literature, relates to the same sorts of thought patterns and somatic bodily responses, heart rate, breathing, etc., but without a clear and present danger being in the environment or right there. So that's the way that we're going to talk about anxiety now. And anxiety is really what binds the obsessions and compulsions, such that someone will have an intrusive thought. So for instance, someone will have the thought that if they turn left on any street, that something bad will happen. Okay, that's an obsession. It's actually not all that uncommon. Now, how bad and what the specificity of that bad thing really is will vary. Some people will think if I turn left, something generally bad will happen. It just makes me feel anxious, so they always insist on going right. Whereas other people will think if I turn left, so-and-so will die, or I will die, or something terrible will happen. I'll get a disease, or someone else will get a disease, or I'll be cursing myself or somebody else in some very specific way. This is unfortunately quite common in people with OCD. So they have this feeling, and the feeling can be generally or specifically related to a particular outcome. But beneath that is a feeling of anxiety, a quickening of the heartbeat, a quickening of breathing, a narrowing of one's visual focus. I've talked about this before on other podcasts, the Master Stress and other podcasts, but if you haven't heard those, let me just briefly describe that when we are in a state of increased so-called autonomic arousal, alertness, stress, etc., our visual field literally narrows. The aperture of our visual field gets smaller, and that's because of the relationship between the autonomic nervous system and your visual system. So you start seeing the world through sort of soda straw view or through binocular-like view as opposed to seeing the big picture. Why is that important? Well, it literally sharpens and narrows your focus toward the very thing that the obsessions and the compulsions are focused on. So the person walking down the street who sees the opportunity to go left or right will only see the bad decision. Their visual field narrows very tightly along that possibility of taking a left turn. And I know as I describe this, it seems totally irrational, but I want to emphasize that the person with OCD knows it's irrational. They might feel crazy because they're having these thoughts, but they know it makes no sense whatsoever that left somehow would be different than right in terms of outcomes in this particular case. And yet it feels as if it would. In fact, in some cases, it feels as if they went left, they would have a full-blown panic attack. So the idea here is that the obsessions and compulsions are bound by anxiety, but then by taking a right-hand turn, again, in this one particular example, by taking a right-hand turn, there's a very brief, I should mention, very brief relief of that anxiety at the time of the decision to go right, not left. And there's an additional drop in anxiety while one takes the right-hand turn as opposed to the left-hand turn. And then, as I alluded to before, there's a reinforcement of the compulsion. In other words, by going right, it doesn't create a situation in the brain and psychology of the person that, you know what, I'm not anxious anymore. Left would have probably been okay. It reinforces the idea that right made me feel better, or turning right made me feel better, and going left would have been that much worse. Again, it reinforces the obsession even further. And again, we could swap out right turns and left turns with something like hand washing, the feeling that something is contaminated and the need to wash one's hands, even though one already washed their hands 20, 30, 50 times prior. And we're actually going to go back to that example a little bit later when we talk about one particular category of therapies that are very effective in many people for OCD, which are the cognitive behavioral and exposure therapies. Because I think some of you have heard of cognitive behavioral and exposure therapies, but the way they are used to treat OCD is very much different than the way they're used to treat other sorts of anxiety disorders and other sorts of disorders generally. So it's fair to say that up to 70% of people with OCD have some sort of anxiety or elevated anxiety, either directly related to the OCD or indirectly related to the OCD. And it's really hard to tease those apart because OCD can create its own anxiety. As I mentioned before, it can even increase its own anxiety. And there's also an issue of depression. Having OCD can be very depressing, right? Especially if some of these OCD thoughts and behaviors start to really impede people's ability to function in life, at work and school and relationship. They can start feeling less optimistic about life. And in fact, some people can become suicidally depressed. That's how bad OCD can be for us. So we have to be careful when saying that 70% of people with OCD also have anxiety, or X number of people with OCD are also depressed, because we don't know whether or not the depression led the OCD or the other way around, or whether or not they're operating, as we say in science, in parallel. Some of the drug treatments for OCD and depression and anxiety can tease some of that apart, and we'll talk about that. But I think it's fair to say that what binds the obsessions and compulsions is anxiety, that there's a feeling of it, or I should say an urgent feeling of a need to get rid of the obsession, and the person feels as if the only way they can do that is to engage in a particular compulsive behavior.
Rule number 4, balance social interactions.
When we lack social interaction that we expect, we become pro-social. However, if we are chronically socially isolated, meaning we don't have interactions with people for a long time, we become actually more introverted. This is separate from all of the tachykinin stuff that I talked about earlier, or falling into states of chronic stress. But it's well established now that in humans and in animals, if you don't give them enough social interaction, they actually become antisocial. And so this is actually a little bit like what one might see with long-term fasting. Okay, I give the example of eating every 4 hours. Now let's give the parallel example of somebody who's been fasting perhaps for 2 or 3 days. If they are expecting to eat and then the meal doesn't arrive, they are not necessarily going to immediately try and seek out food. And that's a little bit counterintuitive. You would have thought, well, they haven't eaten in a very long time. They're going to be very motivated to seek out food. But no, they are accustomed to fasting. Similarly, this social homeostasis circuit works in a way such that when we don't have social interactions for a very long time, we start to lose our craving for social interactions.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5, change your belief system.
As we always begin, as everything begins. Through the power of our minds, controlling our breathing. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if you're here, in this moment, in the present, using your gift, the greatest gift you have, the now. I love you. I love you because we are all one. We can all stay in the present and be our true presence.